Hello and welcome to the CX Files podcast. I'm your host, Mark Hillary. Alistair Niederer is the North America CEO of Ember Group, a management consulting and advisory firm. He has a long track record in CX advice and management, having previously been the CEO at Praxidia and almost 6 years as CEO at Teleperformance UK and South Africa. Alistair recently published a blog on his LinkedIn that I noticed. He was talking about a third wave of customer service and how working from home will be the new normal. So I called him up to ask about what he thinks we're going to see when the crisis subsides. Okay, Alistair, your recent blog talked about the third wave of customer care. Could you maybe explain what you mean by this evolution? What are the three waves?
Hi, Mark. Yeah, it just occurred to me when I was pondering the change and all of the discussions about the new norm, that when you look back in the rearview mirror of customer service, I think that the big revolution in how we handle customers began kind of like 40 years ago when people discovered that the telephone was more of a device to use for selling as well as just communicating. So companies set themselves up to do a lot of telemarketing, and that was a big wave and a big change. And whilst the do not call kind of regime came in, it ushered the way for people to use the device for customer service and technical support. So I kind of thought, that's really the first wave. And the second big wave, which was ushered in both with customer service and with IT service, was taking things offshore and going to a lower cost environment model. And so the second wave was really the massive adoption of the balance between onshore, nearshore, and offshore. And that really, we are talking, massive numbers. So that changed things quite dramatically and enabled companies to provide customer service at a lower cost. So whilst you might consider the rise of technology, automation, AI, RPA, these sort of things, the omni-channel model as a third wave, I saw that as more of a maturity of technology and the use of technology. And therefore, what's happening at the moment, I sort of feel is the third wave, where not only for the contact center world, for the CX world, but for everybody in a work environment, that now flexible working is so massive. And it's kind of here to stay. And, it is going to be the new way of operating the business. So I just regard that as the third wave of customer service.
Yeah, so a lot of the companies doing managing contact centers and customer experience, it looks like they're treating this as if they're handling the immediate crisis by setting everybody up to be a work-at-home agent. But you're suggesting that really we're looking at working from home as a long-term change.
Yeah, I think under the guise of a mass adoption of a work-at-home model, I think that driven by customer demand and customer preference always, that brands are looking at this now and saying, well, if you go back in time, it was an easy decision kind of between saying that we'll either operate a bricks and mortar environment to do our customer service, to now have bricks and mortar and look at work at home as a model. Added to that, the consideration that's been there for all those years of outsourcing, and outsourcing now has moved not only to outsourcing at bricks and mortar, but outsourcing of bricks and mortar and work at home. And you add that to now the gig economy that sees companies offering you the opportunity to either take advantage of a gig CX platform or take advantage of a gig CX service environment, kind of like the Uber for CX model. And you add all those things up and add in the complication of where do those people reside. So are they local? Are they nearshore? Are they offshore? So the model has changed so that the considerations have gone from we do it ourselves to we outsource to then we include all of these other service partners who offer us, even in that you've got 6 or 7 options. So it is a massive shift.
That's interesting. You're mentioning about the Uber for CX there as well. Is that something that is only being driven now because we're seeing so much adoption of work from home?
I think that what's happening is the stamp of approval has kind of come down. So a lot of the large organizations might have seen themselves only offering, a small amount of outsourcing. Maybe 25% of all of the outsource service is undertaken by outsource operators. But now you're starting to see that, because companies have been forced into a work at home model, then they've been forced to rethink the entire model that says, well, actually work at home as a legitimate way of operating service is now absolutely the go. And you'll see companies like Arise and Live Exchange who offer those sorts of Uber for CX, or kind of like the Amazon driver world that says this is absolutely valid, depending on the sort of service that you need to run. But now all of those different service options I talked about before have become mainstream, and they are all legitimate and fine ways of operating service.
Yeah, it's interesting that we're almost seeing like a completely new operating model for customer service. I mean, if you've got like a client company that's working with a partner that uses large contact centers, I mean, what would they be requesting now? You think it's like a completely new mix, like the operating model completely changes?
Yeah, I think that what companies are being forced to do is and these are the market themes we see at Ember, that people are going to have to look at doing an operating model review. And, that's going to encompass things like demand management, consolidation and service improvement, taking consideration for outsourcing, pragmatic change leadership. The whole service culture inside there needs to be reviewed, and we need to consider insights and analytics much more closely. And this has to be a generic way of doing things for all of the channels that we're talking about, and that the skills that we need for this new service world, digital, control, compassionate, how we use AI and robotics, all of these things are part of this, and having a very good innovation roadmap, and a CX design is critical, because everything then should feed off that central model. But it's really important that companies understand that they need to mitigate risk. And, this is no more evident than what we're seeing in COVID-19 and what may, unfortunately might be COVID-20 and COVID-21. By mitigating risk, you need to consider, in your environment, and as you look at joining in other partners to help you with your service model, that you look and make sure you have consistency in your CX, that you have clarity in the way you measure what you're doing, and you have comparability in your performance. So each of these different ways of running your business and encompassing different people to help you, all of these things need to be considered and put together into this new operating model.
Yeah, and that's interesting that you're saying that the clients are going to be like revising their operating model, because I mean, the contact centers themselves, they're essentially, like large warehouses full of people. It's like the complete opposite of what we're seeing right now with social distancing. I mean, I've seen companies talking about the need to have 25 square meters of space for each agent. And would that even make the centers economically viable to have almost like a hotel room for each person?
Yeah, it's a terrific question. And, you've seen over the last few years a tremendous amount of innovation. You've seen the move away from the old metrics and outsourcing of, first call resolutions and average handle times, and moving towards making sure that you give a good customer experience, and that effort scoring and different measurements that allow you to understand whether you're doing a good job by your customer, so that you're growing revenue and you're keeping those clients. And so you've already seen a shift towards, outsource companies providing a great people environment, and companies are doing a spectacular job of that. But when you throw it in the mix of an operation where you run at pretty much low margin, and the cost of people and the cost of buildings are the two greatest costs, then you see a bricks and mortar organization that has a huge operation right now. I mean, they're not going to be able to economically shift to this new paradigm so quickly. But what they are going to do is to say, as the leases drop off, they will gradually expand the way they operate into the new environment, into the new economy, and they will be offering all of the services that are being selected and chosen by the brands. And so that's going to include for them looking at how the physical environment works. And that brings into play companies that are set up to offer service in multiple countries and multiple environments. And you've seen with this pandemic that it's treated differently in different countries, and what will come out of this are different health and safety regimes. And so that will be a consideration for people to say they're not going to stack any more people in like sardines, I'd expect, but what they are going to do is to make sure that they have, the right breakout environments, that they have good spacing, that they look after the care of the employees in their physical environment. It may not be 25 square meters, but it may be more moving towards partitioning and spacing, cleaning, testing, the sort of gear that people are given to make sure that they're safe in their own environment. So, yeah, I think it is going to cause a dramatic change. But, companies that are providing services, particularly in the highly regulated environments, the model isn't going to change that rapidly. So where you've got, high risk environments, there will be a gradual shift in the outsourcing model, but it will be a shift, and it will change to giving the flexibility, and outsourcers will move to a model that says, let's make sure we understand that we can run, whilst we might have a balanced onshore offshore model, we might also have a balanced bricks and mortar WAHA solution. And that is not a black and white thing. That is allowing people to work from a couple of environments and perhaps use the contact center much more as a satellite.
Yeah, so much more of a blended solution rather than, the future being we move back to 100% contact center.
Definitely. And I would think that, my canvassing has seen where an outsourcing average for WAHA probably has been something at around 5 to 7% have been operating as WAHA agents, where this pandemic has pushed those outsource operations up to 70% and beyond. We're talking hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people have had to be relocated to continue service. And I would think that over the next 6 months, you'll see that bounce back to a possibly 20%, I would think. And then over time, maybe it's more. But, each of the different options for service, whether it's doing it yourself, working with the gig CX environment, working with outsourced partners, outsourced technologies, all of these things, are going to change dramatically.
Okay, and the blog that started off this conversation, your third wave of customer care, you're talking there about moving to a new normal. So, I mean, just to finalize this and summarize, how would you summarize the new normal for customer service then?
New normal for customer service, I would draw a parallel to the new normal for wider customer service in terms of how we treat our customers. So customers previously were seen as one great mass of people and treated that way, where because of the ability to use technology and to understand greater the need to look after our customers, we've moving towards a model that looks at us treating people as individuals. So, you and I are treated differently when we're in contact with a business. The business knows everything we've ever done. It understands our preference, our demographics. It's using machine learning to understand us as individual more and tailor solutions and service to us. And I think that is the big shift that's going on with the people that provide the customer service, regardless of where they operate, whether it's for the brand or for a service partner or an outsourcer, that we are going to need to get a lot better at understanding the individuals that work for us in these environments and provide the working environment that suits them. So where you might have looked at a very rigid shift pattern for an outsourcer between 8 and 5, for example, you might see that the preference is about saying, 3 days a week you prefer to work in the center because you're quite a social person, you need access to certain things. 2 days a week you might work from home. On those days you might run 2 4-hour shifts or 1 4-hour shifts, but it's going to be all tailored to the individual. So we're going to see a far greater reliance on workforce management and HR solutions, just as we do in customer service for customers. We're going to look at customer service for the individual. So that whole flexible working model will be very much tailored to our employees and making sure that they are more happy in what they do, which in the end will give us a better service for the customers.
Thanks for listening to the CX Files podcast. Please take a moment to review the podcast because this helps other listeners to find it. And if you have any suggestions, then get in touch with me on Twitter or LinkedIn. I'm at Mark Hillary with 2 L's, or just search Google for Mark Hillary.